Good evening, Californios. It's February 22nd, 2022. This is podcast number 4 of season number 2. And we are Red Star Report. I'm Hal G. Lohr, and this is Voices for the California Nation. Before we get to the main event tonight, part 2 of Book Review California with Sue Hirsch and the Dr. Lanada War Jack interview, let's briefly visit one of today's most unavoidable media stories. It seems right now there's no escaping the non-stop U.S. national media discussion of the situation in Ukraine and how our glorious U.S. leaders 3,000 miles away in Washington, D.C. seem just hell-bent on negotiating us right to the brink of another possible war that has zero to do with California. This time the send lawyers, guns, and money crisis is Russia and Ukraine, but to quote the great Yogi Berra, this feels like deja vu all over again. Because for months before this, it was China and Taiwan, if you remember. Before that, America botched the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Before that, it was betraying the Kurds, who had helped America fight the evils of ISIS. When America botched that cowardly retreat that abandoned the Syrian people. And before that, it was the monumental war for oil screw-up in Iraq, so yay, war again. And Californians didn't see this coming. I mean, really? So, in this corner, Zelensky and Ukraine, and in that corner, Putin, Russia, and let's get ready to rumble. Now, we can distract ourselves arguing good guys, bad guys politics of the Ukrainians, although nothing really justifies being invaded by a foreign country. We can debate Putin's motives, and is this ongoing Russian aggression or just a big paranoid misunderstanding? But does any of this media circus of justification and accusation really matter to us? And by us, I mean Californians. Because looking at it purely as Californians, who's right or who's wrong in Eastern Europe is just a distraction. Where Californians should really be looking is at numbers closer to home. You see, 1 out of every 8 people in the U.S. military are Californians, the largest number of all 50 states. That means mathematically in any of America's endless wars, roughly 1 out of 8 casualties the U.S. military suffers will be the blood of Californians' sons and daughters being spilled. Now, you can wrap yourself in the American flag and justify U.S. imperialism, militarism, or nationalism as patriotism or duty or honor or anything else you want. But can you deny that endless U.S. wars where such a blood cost is expected to be paid by California's sons and daughters, and how that shouldn't weigh heavy on the California independence question? California independence means no more California kids dying to feed the U.S. war machine. So this can't be more relevant as another good reason for the California independence movement and the need for a free and independent California. This is Voices for the California Nation. Next up, we return to Book Review California, hosted by Sue Hirsch, with part 2 of Native Resistance, an intergenerational fight for survival and life by Dr. Lanada War Jack. And that starts now.
there were a lot of people here before Columbus, and this is why we're called often colonizers and maybe less politely invaders, but that is also true that we actually invaded the Americas and colonized them. So I just wanted to remind our listeners about that as well.
Well, we have a huge history and a lot needs to be learned. And it's been 52 years since we set up Native American studies that's been duplicated throughout the country. But still, nobody knows their history. Why is that? You know, it's because colonizers are still doing what they're doing. And you can call it whatever you want. They're still brainwashing and colonizing people under different names. But I think that the main thing that people need to know, especially Native people, is that because of our culture, we're not violent. We are the true people of peace.
Mm-hmm.
And that is within our whole structure. We can live anywhere throughout our continents and have a different geographic environment. But that geographic environment is what makes cultures, tribes look different. But it's just that we've adapted different medicines, different herbs, different plants, different animals, you know, that are geographic to our proximity of where we're living. And it looks different, but it's not. Mother Earth is always Mother Earth.
Let's talk about your book just a little bit more, Dr. War Jack. Someone said that in a Native American community, you're taught to think, how can I help my community, rather than what can I get out of this land or this community? How can, what can I take from it? You're taught to think, what are my responsibilities to the community? And that's where our communities are very different, American versus non-Native versus Native American communities. Do you want to give your take on that?
Well, Indigenous communities were worldwide. Of course, it changed in time and was corrupted in many different places. And also our own now have been corrupted by the Christians and the missions and the Catholic Church and all the Spaniards and everything that happened to us. But the Western society does not have a culture, an Indigenous culture. It's just one that they made up 500 years ago. And they don't acknowledge the natural laws. So they could just rip up and tear up the earth and pollute and mine and do whatever they want to Mother Earth, because they think of it as it's not alive, but it is alive and they don't know it. So Western society has brought up generations of people who don't have a clue about what life really is. And that's why this world is becoming so bad that pollution and violence and everything is rampant. We're such an evil world now. And, how are we going to correct it? People need to, be cognizant of the fact that all of our cultures, and including non-natives, including white people who came from Scotland or England or wherever, we all originally had a culture, an indigenous culture. And we need to know what that is, and we need to learn from that. But that's something, we were the last continents left that had that culture and that knowledge and that spirit. And that's why those that still have it left, even after assimilation and everything that has happened to us, the genocide, everything, we still retain our culture. And that's something that will always continue to help us. And that's how we were able to survive into this world at this time.
Mhm. Native culture is an idea that I like to talk about a lot. And what strikes me about Native cultures is that in every Native culture, the people eat from the land that was growing there very naturally without their having brought seeds from another country and their pets from another country that don't belong there. These are non-native things and they become pests and take over. That to me is part of what a culture is. And it's not ideas and plants and animals that were brought from another country and transplanted to this country. And I feel like that's what makes us colonizers and invaders more than as much as anything else. As almost as much as this cultural genocide and real genocide that we did to the Native Americans. Do you sort of understand what I'm saying and sort of agree with it?
Well, 80% of the food, or even higher, comes from our continents that went worldwide. And, like whenever I go into a Mexican restaurant and I see it cited that these recipes are original recipes from Spain, and like, they don't even know that Spain never had tomatoes. They had to bring it from America. They never had corn, they had to bring it from our country. But now they're claiming these are their original traditional recipes from Spain. I never even had that kind of food. So yeah, I see so many hypocritical things around. You got to really open your eyes and just look around, and you can see so many things, and it's kind of harsh. It's hard, but you just have to, because there are so many things that are wrong, that are not going on right in so many different ways. But the natural laws is what we need to know. What's natural in your area? Like we had territories, and we knew in the spring where to get our food, where to hunt, where to gather our berries and hunt our elk and get buffalo plants. We always knew where those territories were, and we moved around. But once they put us on reservations and held us in that one place, our people starved because we couldn't go out on the buffalo hunt. Then they killed all the buffalo, to make sure that we couldn't, because a buffalo, we could make everything from the buffalo, not only just our food, but our housing and things that we needed to live, our clothes, everything. So, it was pretty intentional what happened to us. And, the genocide, 90 million people, and those go higher. I mean, it was worse than what happened to the Jews in Germany. And of course, they don't like to think of it in that way, but what happened. And
Right.
I don't know if we're ever going to be able to turn that around. And because of the imbalance that we're living under, the mining, the pollution of our waters, the air and the land, everything that's happening, I don't know if we're going to be able to turn that around. I know Biden has introduced some legislation to stop the methane gas in the air, or to keep it controlled. And I don't know how that's going to be able to help, because once we reach that tipping point of the imbalance, it's going to flip. And the world will survive, but not us.
Right.
So this is the time that we need to know our prayers and be able to maintain our spirituality. And by spirituality, I don't mean some made up religion that came from Europe that they're imposing on us and have been, but I mean our true native spirituality, where we lived within the balance of nature and we knew how it interacted with each other. So with our culture, we're connected to the earth, but Western society isn't. And they're not learning anything either.
That's exactly right. We haven't learned from our past very well either, in that these genocides continue even now.
Well, after assimilation and Christianity and everything that's been imposed, it's really left a horrible impact on all of our people. So there are some that know, and that's what we're looking forward to, and how we're trying to keep ourselves afloat in this bizarro world we're living in. And it is everybody, because of the patriarchy. Like I said, we're on the federal side. Everybody else is on the state side, but the people are all on the bottom of it all. And the same thing that's happening to us is happening to everyone else. They just don't realize it or know it because it's so huge. But with tribal governments, it's easier. This is where I learned, because they're smaller. I mean, they're like a control group that you can personally witness and see, how it's functioning and what's happening. And then all the plays that are getting pulled in from Washington, and who's doing what and who's falling into it, and why and how that happens. And it's happening here, so it's happening out there on a much bigger scale.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg spoke on, and she wrote the majority opinion in City of Sherrill versus Oneida Indian Nation of New York. The High Court ruled 8-1 in favor of the City of Sherrill, dealing a blow to Native American sovereignty claims. At issue in the case was whether land parcels granted to the Oneida Nation by a treaty in 1794, which had since been sold and only recently repurchased by the tribe, should be considered part of its reservation and therefore be exempt from local taxes.
2005, yeah, that was, they also used another law that the Catholic Church introduced. It's when the Catholics came over and the priests determined that Indians could not own land because they were not Christians. And that case is based on that. And it was the last one that I did cite that in my book somewhere too. But there's so many laws and so much things you have to know and remember. And that's why I'm saying, for young people, you need to do your research. You need to learn and know the truth. Study, know what's going on in this world. Because, as young people, they're not afraid. But at the same time, they've got to maintain their nonviolence, because as cultured people, we were never violent.
I'm just showing your book again, because this is why we're here today. I'm the book and author's reviewer for Red Star Reports, here today with Dr. Lanada War Jack, who wrote Native Resistance, an Intergenerational Fight for Survival and Life. Did you want to wrap up with any takeaway message that you'd like everyone to remember as they go on with their day today?
Well, I just want to say that truth is very hurtful. And once you realize the truth and it hurts you, you've got to temper your anger, no matter who you are, whatever it is. You've got to temper it into positivity, because violence breeds violence. That's all there is to it. And this country is so famous for it. But yet they think that they can stand on the soapbox and preach, but they're in no position to do that at all. As young people, you need to go forth and learn your culture and your prayers, and that's the only thing that's going to save us if we're past that point of where the earth is going to already decide. Now, I've already heard they've decided, but as people, we still need to maintain our spiritual contact and know what to do when that time comes. So that's a message that was sent from 20,000 years ago through our prophecies.
Awesome. Absolutely. I totally get that.
I was going to tell you, and I didn't say anywhere in that book either, but the picture on that cover is my father. He was my guidance and my inspiration, and why I wrote the book, because it's history. And I never took anyone else's history. I just used my own, and I used my own experience. But
Wonderful.
It's the same everywhere. You just got to do your own too. And I just encourage the young writers to do that, to learn their history and write it down. Do an audiobook. I'm doing an audiobook now, but so that's real important.
So I think we're just going to wrap it here, because that sounds like a great takeaway message for our listeners today. And I want to thank you for being here with us today, Dr. War Jack. We were honored to have you.
Thank you.
And I thank you for your contribution to society that is your book, Native Resistance, an Intergenerational Fight for Survival in Life. Thank you, listeners. Go get this book. Thanks for being with us today. Thank you, Dr. Lanada War Jack, again. Bye-bye now. This is Sue Hirsch for Red Star Report. Back to you, Hal.
Thank you again, Sue Hirsch. On the next episode of Book Review California, Sue interviews California pro-culturate author, consultant, and activist Jill Nagel. Be sure to check back with Red Star Report for the release date of that. For more information on Dr. Lanada War Jack and her book, Native Resistance, an Intergenerational Fight for Survival in Life, you can follow the link in the comments section or go to her website at drwarjack.com. That's drwarjack.com. And we at Red Star Report look forward to more discussions with Dr. War Jack very soon. In a follow-up to our opening Voices for the California Nation on the unfolding Ukraine-Russia crisis, Matt Owen presents a differing perspective in his next Red Star Rising segment titled American Imperialism versus Peace and Freedom. That starts right here.
Hello, everyone. Today I come to you, as always, under the flag of peace, emblazoned with the Star of Liberation, California's liberation flag since 1836. As if we didn't have enough crises, now we find U.S. and Russia locked in a confrontation as serious as the Cuban Missile Crisis. So given that situation, and given that U.S. disinformation is being spread in our independence movement, I feel compelled to respond. First, the U.S. does not own the world. It does not have the right to attack other countries, overthrow their governments, plunder their resources. No. the two ruling U.S. parties are not entitled to power. If folks in the California independence movement maintain that the U.S. owns the world and that the two ruling U.S. parties are entitled to power, it is a false independence movement. It is a fake independence movement. My other message is, as a member of the California independence movement, to the left in general, and in particular to my own party, Peace and Freedom. Separation of California from the United States would have roughly the same effect on it as the breakup of the Soviet Union. If you don't support the independence of California from the United States, you're no anti-imperialist, you're no internationalist, you're questionable as a socialist. But I also have good news, and that is that the Peace and Freedom Party and the Green Party have agreed to form a unified slate. That is, to not stand competing candidates and to run for office in jurisdictions. This is wonderful news. We can build on that. Because if the Peace and Freedom Party abandons its futile campaigns outside of California, and the Green Party throws its support to PFP inside California, that opens the door to PFP joining the California independence movement. I've seen this on the Twitter feed of California National Party. They're moving closer and closer to PFP's platform, except PFP hasn't joined the movement yet. So the unity slate between PFP of California and the Greens of the U.S. is a step in the right direction. I intend to campaign for California independence in PFP's 2024 convention. I intend to do that. We've got a lot of cognitive dissonance to do away with. Once we do that, then we will shoot forward to our liberation, which will be of tremendous benefit to the liberation of workers everywhere. Viva Gran California Libre. Workers of the world unite.
That was Matt Owen with American Imperialism versus Peace and Freedom on his segment, Red Star Rising. Thank you, Matt. I'm going to kick this podcast up a notch with this week's Activism in Action with Shankar Singham. Hit it.
Thank you, Hal. Welcome to another episode of Activism in Action. Let's get right into it right away here. A lot to cover right now. So, been to a ton of protests. Other side of the police line, conservatives. We call them Nazis. We call them fascists. Half of them don't even understand why we're calling them that. So, I am going to explain, conservatives, why we call you Nazis. And this is to establish the main point so I can go on with the rest of what I got to say right now. A grave and dire warning. So, conservatives, why do we call you Nazis? This is why we call you Nazis, okay? So, if you think that police treat everybody the same when they pull them over, that they don't kill black people indiscriminately, that the cops are A-okay, they're not racist, cops are cool, you might be a Nazi. You might be a Nazi. If you think that Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization, you might be a Nazi. If you think that immigrants coming up here from the South to find work without any papers, they bring their families, they come up here to find work, If you think they're here to commit crimes and murder people, you're a Nazi. You're definitely a Nazi. If you think that Muslim refugees who are coming here to seek asylum after we bombed the freedom out of them, if you think they're coming here to destroy this land, this country, whatever, or cause terrorist attacks, you're a Nazi. Because those are exactly what Nazis believe. And when you agree with Nazis on that subject matter, when you vote with Nazis on that subject matter, guess what? You're a fucking Nazi. Okay? So now that we got that established on conservatives, why we call you Nazis, now you know, because you behave that way, you act that way, you vote that way. Now let's get into the topic at hand here, because we have 57 insurrectionist Nazis. 57 folks are running for political office all over the United States. None in California, so I've heard so far. You've got 57 from UPolitics, 57 running for office. 11 of those ran last year. School board, city council, state legislature. This upcoming election, you've got over 24 running for Congress alone. You've got 3 of those people still have court cases coming up for felonies from January 6th. They're felons. They're violent felons who are running for political office because they don't give a shit. Leftists, it's hard as hell for us to get to run for office. We don't think we're good enough. They think the more bottom of the barrel you get, the more you're qualified to run for office. And that's what's happening, folks. And when these people get in charge, what do you think is going to happen when your neighbor's kid gets separated from their parents because they don't have papers? Or your coworker's marriage is nullified because they have abolished marriage rights for LGBTQ. Or say they start burning books and banning books at schools and control what is taught in our school system so our education system can match the South, which has one of the lowest education rates in the world. You want a shitty education? You want to see your neighbors being hauled away? What are you going to do about it? You're going to protest? What do you think is going to happen when you protest, folks? They've been preparing for us to be protesting this shit. They're going to come out there. They're going to yell at us and box us off the street. They've got the firearms and they've got the wherewithal to do it. Folks, having a firearm is of utmost importance at this point. I'm not speaking for the NRA, who doesn't give a shit about leftists or any minorities. The NRA is set up for white people. The Second Amendment is set up for white people. It's not meant for anybody else. Case in point, you've got black gun owners indiscriminately killed by police. Where's the NRA on that? You've got Philando Castile, Jason Washington, Alton Sterling, Amir Locke, E.J. Bradford. On and on, you have legal gun owners getting shot by the police for no reason at all and for no crimes at all. Where is the NRA outrage on that? There's none. Because they don't give a shit about minorities. They don't give a shit about leftists. They don't give a shit. They only care about the white man. That's the NRA, the National Racist Association. And here's even more context to put that point further through. The KKK was for gun control. After the Civil War, when blacks were free and they exercised their right to vote, they started owning property, started running businesses, and to protect that from the locals, they had firearms. The Union Army was still there to make sure that nothing would happen to them. But the minute the Union Army left, the KKK started enacting voting restriction laws. And after that was enforced, they banned firearms, which forced black business owners and black farmers to give up their firearms. And at which point, the KKK swooped in and took everything they had. Another case in point, Black Panther Party, 60s, San Francisco, open carry. California was open carry. Not when it's black people. Folks, if you are for more gun legislation and you want more gun control, go buy a gun. Because the second that leftists, liberals, progressives have more firearms or as many firearms as the right, that's when they're going to start making laws restricting firearms. To hell with the Second Amendment, they'll say. Go buy yourself a firearm and do it quick. We have 2 years left. 2 years before they start making some restrictions on firearms. California has a AR-15 that gun manufacturers have made just for us, folks. It is safe as hell. More on that on the next episode. Hal, that's all I got for you guys. Stay awake, stay woke. God bless California.
Thank you, Shankar. That was Activism in action. Time for me to bring this podcast home. Let's go to talking points. Today on Talking Points, we answer the three Billy Goats Gruff question of, who dares to cross my bridge? Let's talk about the talking points and the trolls who come along to troll our talking points and the toll those trolls want to take on those talking points. And sorry, I could not resist. For those who may have noticed, Red Star Report has been doing talking points for over 30 episodes now. The reason for those talking points is to give people in the California independence movement answers to frequently asked questions about the merits of California independence that have come up over the years in our activism for the movement. But what happens when you encounter those annoying trolls who just don't take facts for an answer? Now, I admit that for some experienced California independence movement activists, beating up trolls is just their idea of a good time. But for many people, trolls can be frustrating and even intimidating. So let me help you when you run into an anti-California independence troll. On behalf of the entire California independence movement, we hereby give you permission to not engage. We are Red Star Report, the activist resistance media group of the CIM, and we say you have the absolute right to simply delete their comments from your internet feed and just tell them to go the fuck away if you want. You're under no obligation to give trolls a soapbox whatsoever, and you don't have to let them waste your time. Because let's face it, a troll is just an asshole with an agenda who kicks in the door to your internet living space to silence your voice through intimidation and gaslighting. It's a form of cyberbullying where the troll demands and depends on your civility as they exercise zero civility of their own to ram their agenda down your throat at your expense. They want to demean your voice by drawing you into an endless and pointless argument to twist the conversation into what they can call a gotcha moment. It's always, well, what about this? And then you answer. And, well, what about that? And you answer. Then what about such and such? And on and on and on and on. Here's a hint. Don't do it. Delete their thread. They hate that, and that's a win. Their goal is to silence opposing views and call your beliefs into question by making the voicing of your opinion miserable enough that you avoid speaking up at all. Don't let them. Because there's no point left in their anti-California independence arguments anyway. This debate was over in 2016. It's a 2 + 2 = 4, and California would be better off without the United States argument. go listen to the talking points. The California independence movement has nothing left to prove on this, and neither do you. So don't get me wrong. When you run into somebody who's genuinely interested or curious about California independence, by all means, feel free to refer to those talking points and answer their honest questions. That's what we're here for. But unless endless arguing about California independence with internet trolls is your idea of a good time, you don't gotta do it. You have permission from the California independence movement to end the call, to delete the thread, or just walk out of the room. Because you and the California independence movement don't owe internet trolls a damn thing. This is Talking Points. That's Red Star Report. I invite you to check out our website, www.redstarreport.com. And please subscribe to our Red Star Report YouTube channel. Get your friends to subscribe. Get their friends to subscribe. Get all the friends to subscribe. Everybody. Please go to our Red Star Report Facebook page, Twitter, and Instagram, and give us a like and a follow. Because if you want a real California independence movement media group, it's all about the algorithms. Our thanks to you and all our Red Star Rebels for watching. We are Red Star Report.